In the 1st century, Britain was no longer a distant island beyond Rome's reach. Roman roads cut through the countryside. Forts rose above valleys and rivers. Around them, Celtic villages watched an empire reshape their world. Among the Iceni people stood Boudica, a queen remembered for her presence, courage, and defiance. She was not born into legend. She became one when Rome pushed her people beyond the limits of silence. For a time, the Iceni lived in uneasy peace with Rome. King Prasutagus ruled as an ally, hoping diplomacy could protect his kingdom. But peace built on fear is fragile, and every promise depends on power. When Prasutagus died, the balance collapsed. His household entered mourning, but beyond the grief came a darker realization. Without him, Rome no longer saw the Iceni as partners, but as property to be claimed. Roman officials arrived with law, soldiers, and cold certainty. Lands were seized, wealth was taken, and old agreements were brushed aside. To the Iceni, it was more than politics. It was the theft of their future. Boudica herself was humiliated by Roman authority. This moment must be remembered with dignity, not spectacle. What mattered was the wound it left, a queen dishonored, a family harmed, and a people forced to choose submission or resistance. From that injustice, rebellion caught fire. Boudica spoke not only as a ruler, but as a woman whose suffering had become the suffering of her people. Her grief became a voice, and that voice became a storm. The revolt spread beyond the Iceni. Other Brittonic tribes joined, carrying their shields, banners, and anger into one cause. They were not Rome's machine of war. They were families, warriors, elders, and communities rising together. At the same time, the Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus was far away, leading troops in another campaign. The empire looked powerful, but its strength was stretched thin. Boudica's timing turned anger into opportunity. The rebel army marched toward Camulodunum, a proud Roman center and symbol of occupation. For Boudica's followers, the road ahead was more than a military advance. It was the first answer to years of humiliation. Camulodunum fell. Smoke rose above Roman walls, and the confidence of the occupiers was broken. The rebels had struck a city that was supposed to represent order, power, and permanence. Suddenly, Rome looked vulnerable. Across Roman Britain, shock spread quickly. Messengers brought reports no commander wanted to hear. This was not a small disturbance. It was a rebellion with momentum, a queen at its center, and an empire forced to react. In Londinium, fear filled the streets. Merchants, soldiers, and families understood that the rebel army was approaching. The city was young, growing, and wealthy, but wealth means little when protection disappears. Suetonius faced a terrible decision. With too few troops to defend Londinium, he chose to preserve his army instead of the city. It was a cold Roman calculation, but one that would shape the final battle. Londinium burned. The city that had promised Roman prosperity became a landscape of smoke and ruin. The rebellion had reached its height, and for a moment, it seemed Rome's hold on Britain might truly break. Boudica now stood at the center of a vast uprising. Her name carried fear among Romans and hope among rebels. She had lost everything to Roman power, yet for a brief moment, she made that power tremble. But Rome regrouped. Suetonius chose his ground carefully, selecting a narrow battlefield where numbers would matter less than discipline. The legions formed their lines, patient, silent, and trained for exactly this kind of moment. Before the final battle, the two worlds faced each other. On one side stood Roman order. On the other, a people fighting for memory, justice, and freedom. Between them lay the decision of history. Boudica addressed her warriors one last time. She reminded them what had been taken, and what could still be defended. Her words carried across shields, spears, wagons, and faces ready to risk everything. Then the battle began. The Britons surged forward with fury, banners whipping through dust and wind. The Roman line did not break. Shields locked together, spears pointed outward, and the disciplined wall waited. Fury met formation. Courage met training. The rebel charge was powerful, but Roman discipline turned the field against it. The very narrow ground that Boudica had entered became the trap Suetonius had prepared. As the battle turned, the rebellion broke. Panic spread through the rear, wagons blocked retreat, and the great uprising dissolved into chaos. Boudica had challenged the empire, but Rome had survived the storm. What happened to Boudica afterward is uncertain. Ancient sources give us mystery more than certainty. But perhaps that is part of her power. History remembers not only how she died, but why she rose. Rome won the battle, but Boudica became a legend. Her rebellion failed to free Britain, yet her name endured as a symbol of courage against overwhelming power. Subscribe to the channel and join the History Storytellers for cinematic history documentaries and journeys into the past.